The upside of it is that if you've done it to yourself, which we have, it is comparatively easier to unpick that.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia and today I'm joined by James answering all your questions on this week's Belgian Grand Prix Akkodis Race Debrief. Now James, challenging weekend for us this week in Belgium, but before we get into the fan questions, just a brief overview of the weekend from your perspective.
Clearly a very difficult weekend. I think one of the things I like about this team is that whether we've had a great weekend or a terrible one, we're here on camera talking about it. And this one was no fun at all. Sprint weekend, we didn't get off on the right foot, struggled in qualifying, both our cars having a very undistinguished time in sprint qualifying and therefore an anonymous time in sprint race. We improved things a little bit as the weekend went on. It was nevertheless not one to remember fondly.
You just touched on that a little bit, the challenges in the sprint qualifying, obviously the debris that went onto the track when Kimi came off. So how were the cars actually damaged from the debris? And had the cars not been compromised in the sprint, would we have set them up differently for the main race?
Well, Kimi's car was fairly substantially damaged by its passage through the gravel. It hurt the front wing, hurt the floor. George's took some sort of gravel rash because he went over the gravel that was brought back onto the track by Kimi, and that created some fairly gnarly edges on the underside of the car. Although George felt the car's performance was notably lower when he went back out, we couldn't see that so much in the data. I think we just had the car in the wrong place with the wrong aero balance on and gave him something that was just far too much of a handful for the qualifying to work well. And then once you're in the qualifying, you don't have a lot of chance to change things because you're in parc fermé then. So we were able to adjust the front flap and take some of the sting out of it, but the sprint race itself was mostly compromised then by virtue of having poor starting positions.
And you touched a little bit on the setup, but Spa has its own challenges, but is there a specific reason why we were struggling to find pace in Sector 2?
I don't actually think that we were specifically struggling in Sector 2. I think that we were reasonably poor in all the corners. It's just we were running a bit less downforce than most of the other cars, so we have a smaller rear wing on than some of the people we would ordinarily compete with. That tends to mean that you look relatively bright and cheerful on the straights, but then correspondingly when you get to the middle sector of the track where most of the corners are, you're going to see most of the bad side of having that small rear wing on. But if you looked at the corners of Sectors 1 and Sector 2, we still weren't really setting the world on fire there. So we were off the pace. It looks like it's coming all from Sector 2, mostly because of the rear wing setting we chose to run.
Is there something that makes this track particularly difficult for overtaking with this generation of cars?
Well, as the years have gone by, this generation of cars have become trickier and trickier from an overtaking point of view. And one of the things that makes Spa a challenge is that you have a smaller rear wing on the car in Spa than you do at other circuits. So although the straight is very, very long, and you'd think therefore, well, you'd be a sitting duck with a DRS on that straight, the DRS effect, because the rear wing is small, when it does its thing, there's less drag to get rid of because it's small to start with. And that means that you don't actually pick up a lot of lap time from the DRS, which means it's a struggle for everybody to get by at that track.
And just looking at Kimi's race a little bit, he obviously had a difficult start and then he was stuck behind a DRS train for a little while, but why did we decide to box him when he was finally starting to make his way through the field?
We were in a position where there was little to lose either way. He had actually driven well, picking off a number of cars, had made progress from his P19 grid slot, but even with a real following wind, he was not going to make it to the points, picking one off at a time. And we were at a point where it was possible that with fresher tyres he might have made one place or two places more if the tyre had been particularly kind to him when he put on fresh boots. But it was like, well, we might as well try it, because he isn't going to get to the points from where he is. So that was the thinking.
I think a weekend like this would be challenging for a driver of any experience, but how is Kimi doing generally?
I think he's, like the rest of us, massively fed up with a string of results that are well below what we were collectively achieving earlier in the year. I hope he takes some solace from the fact that we tell him, and it's demonstrably a fact that we have taken the wrong steps with the car, making our team less competitive, and that he is paying the price for that, as is George. If the car isn't where it needs to be, then it will be a struggle getting through the qualifying stages in your rookie season in F1. And it's utterly clear to all of us that the thing we need to do is make the car better, and then Kimi's fortunes will reverse with that. And hopefully he's listening to us as we say those reassuring words, because we absolutely know that he is putting in the effort on his side of that bargain.
And on the car, is there any specific reason why we don't look to have the pace that we did have in those first few rounds, and comparing now to how quick the Ferraris are looking as well?
Yeah, well, not just the Ferraris, but others too. I mean, it's a guessing game, complete guessing game, when you try to say what maybe other teams have done to improve themselves. But when you have a situation where seemingly everybody's improved by the same amount, everybody, and you've just slipped backwards, more often than not when that happens, it's because you have made yourself worse by that amount. It isn't that everyone magically has put on the same size upgrade and crept up around you through that. And even if you ignore the lap times completely, you ignore the points that we are not getting anymore like we did earlier in the year, and you just focus on what the drivers are telling us about the car, they're telling us that the car of today and of the last handful of races is a car that is suffering from instability under braking in high speed and turning in high speed in a way that it wasn't doing earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, it was a relatively easy car to set up, relatively easy to sort of pitch it up in qualifying for it to do okay. It was not enough to be championship competitive, but it was a whole sight easier to deal with than the one we have to do today. The downside of that, of course, is it's dispiriting when we've made a lot of effort to improve the car and we have not. The upside of it is that if you've done it to yourself, which we have, it is comparatively easier to unpick that, because you just have to retrace your steps a bit, understand which of the steps you took that was in the wrong direction, and then move forward from there. It hurts, but it hurts less than let's say if you launched a car with gremlins inside it and you just had no idea what it was. If you've gone from a sort of relatively manageable beast to one that isn't, then, and you know you only did X, Y, and Z in between, then you have a path backwards.
Now we're halfway through the season, one more race until the summer break. So just going into Hungary, what are your thoughts?
Our thoughts are to work as effectively as we can in investigating the things that we may have done that have made things worse, to hopefully pick off the most likely candidates and get that sorted in Hungary. If we're fortunate, then to steady the ship a bit there and go into the summer break going, okay, that was no fun, but at least we can look forward to the second half of the year with that behind us. And if not those things, then we'll go to the next candidate at the next race and so on.